Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This is Mike Steckline with the Institute for Enterprise Excellence. Hope everyone's having a good day. I was planning on being on site with my friends at Winneshiek Medical Center, but in our area of the country, we've got some snow coming, so I'm remote, but the people from Winneshiek Medical Center and particularly the Rehab department are ready to give a great presentation. As I get into this, just want to let you know that the phones are unmuted, but you can use the chat function if you would like to put any questions out there for consideration. Later on, we're going to unmute the phones and be able to listen to questions and see what questions people might have. This webinar is being recorded, so those in attendance are going to be able to review it again and also forward it to those that could not attend the presentation today. Just a little background on what you're going to hear today. So two of the models that we talk about in the materials that we share, there's a model of sustainability, and then there's a model around velocity. And what we know is most organizations are not aware of the full picture of the model, and they'll have a tendency to try to obtain results by looking at the tools and using the tools and then trying to push those tools into the system. And this has a tendency to produce what people experience as the flavor of the month phenomenon, and they repeat it over and over again. And it really doesn't lead to a sustainable cultural transformation. What the folks at Winneshiek Medical Center and other organizations, and many of you may be on the call today, are trying to do is take a different pathway, which means learning about the connection to purpose, understanding principles of enterprise excellence, and then the redesign of systems. So you're going to be hearing a little bit about that today. When it comes to this approach, you can call these guiding principles around how do you do this. We recommend starting simple and experimentation, and then also putting even pressure on all three of the dimensions of the velocity model. If you can envision a car pedal, acceleration pedal, and the pedal that people most commonly push when they want their transformation effort to move faster is the improve pedal, which is not wrong, but it's not going to lead to the kind of transformation you want because it doesn't align people to what they need to be improving. So people can improve things that perhaps aren't the most important things to improve. And also you haven't really fully enabled or engaged the people that need to be doing the improvement every day. And so you're going to be hearing a little bit about that. The other thing I just wanted to highlight is our recommendation is that people think about how they're going to start with leaders and how leaders are going to really understand these principles, use these principles, identify their ideal behaviors that they're going to model, and then start to, again, experiment with some simple system building and then proceeding that way in the organization. Another way that we look at this is a swim lane concept where we think about the activity for people. I'm going to start in the middle, what leadership needs to be doing, and then down below the support teams. These are often lean teams, organizational development teams, whatever. And then looking up at down at number 3, model areas are areas where you would want to do some purposeful experimentation to see how this would work in your organization. And then looking up at number 4, what about the organization at large and how do you manage the pull that will come from people that want to be involved in this? And then the macro system is the larger system of which you're a part and how you communicate with them. And Sarah's going to be mentioning the concept of rogue huddlers, and typically what will happen is people will latch on to these ideas and they'll want to try them, and you certainly want to encourage that. And I think what we're seeing at this facility is Sarah and her team are leading the effort as far as what this does, what it makes sense, how it makes sense, and so I think that's one way to think about this. And then finally, just briefly, Sarah's going to be talking about how they redesigned and adjusted systems. So you'll be hearing a little bit about that in this presentation. And this is the model template that we talk about in that. And there's some upcoming webinars that we're going to be talking about this a little bit more. So I'd like to turn it over to Sarah and her team and let them talk about their terrific story that they have going on at Winneshiek Medical Center. And Sarah and team, thanks again for doing this for our folks on the call today.
Okay, well, thanks, Mike. We'll go ahead and get started. We thought, since it's just before Christmas, that it would be appropriate that this webinar follow a Christmas storybook theme. So we would invite you to grab a blanket, some popcorn, hot cocoa, and come join us as we share a rehab story from rogue huddlers to model cell. Chapter 1, where our story begins. Just to give you an idea of kind of where we are at, if you travel just a few hours south of Mall of America, you will find yourself in the state of Iowa. And located in that state, in the northeast corner, is a small town of 8,000 people. It's Decorah. It's nestled in the bluffs, and it's beautiful. Pictures can be seen here. It's not quite as peaceful as it looks in these photos because we're in a winter storm warning right now, but it's definitely a beautiful place. So in Decorah is Winneshiek Medical Center, and we were just recently recognized as being in the top 20 critical access hospitals in the nation. We're a small hospital. We cover northeast Iowa and southeast Minnesota, but we are the second largest critical access hospital in Iowa. We have an active medical staff of more than 30 Mayo Clinic Health System and Gunderson Health System physicians, and we have a management service agreement and a professional service agreement with the Mayo Clinic Health System Franciscan Healthcare. And then how you can see on the graph, we have multiple outreach regional locations that we serve as well. So then, now you're entering WMC, and if you go down the stairs, you will find yourself in the main home of our rehab department. And there you're going to see staff. We're providing quality care to our patients, as you can see up in that top right photo. But you're also going to see something else. As you see in the photo under Align, you'll see myself discussing with an employee her personal goals and how it ties back to department and organizational goals. And then as you move down the triangle to enable, you will see staff engaging in daily huddles, whether by conference phone or in person. And then moving to the right down the triangle under improve, you're going to see staff identifying and solving daily problems. In this picture, there's an OT assistant who's working with a rehab tech on a process to alert staff when a room needs to be cleaned. It really is an inspiring culture to see, and we're evolving each day by following the principles of align, enable, and improve. So just wait though, don't push stop as you think this is just another feel-good story with no connection to real life. Today we are going to be talking about some of the challenges as well as the obstacles and what we like to call hiccups, which we'll explain later in our story. Another thing that you may be wondering is, how do you develop a culture like that, and why are we referred to as rogue huddlers to model cell? We'll need to start a little bit back in our story to understand that better. The years before principle-based architecture. So I've been a part of the rehab department for about 17 years. I started out as a frontline staff occupational therapist, and when I started, there had just been a major turnover of staff. We had lost a significant percentage of our market share, and so we really only had a skeleton team left. We were all very committed, but I would say many of us were undertrained and under-equipped. The leader of our department had also just joined our department. And fortunately, he had recognized the importance of engaging staff. And so one tactic that he had started to help to engage staff was the initiation of our annual strategic planning meetings. And there's a few pics that you can look at on this slide. Our meetings are typically always off-site, and that's really to help promote out-of-the-box thinking because we're brainstorming ideas of what we want to work on and what we want to improve on over in the next year. The meetings also include team building activities where you can see on the bottom left, and typically a lot of sugar and caffeine to help us brainstorm as well. And you know, we've been doing these meetings for about 17 years, and each year they have evolved into something better. They're more clear, they're more engaging, they're more constantly moving forward. But truly the purpose established by our director at the time has remained constant. The purpose is we want to develop department and individual goals that link to our strategies, but more importantly, we want to engage staff by involving them in improvement efforts and opportunities for informal leadership. And this is important to us, and so I would like to take just a bit of time to explain a little bit more on how we engage staff. From early on, we have developed work groups to work on goals to improve the department. And with these work groups, the frontline staff, they can volunteer to serve as a leader. And this is kind of neat because it gives staff an opportunity to engage in a leadership development in a low risk and safe environment. Here's a few pics of our work groups in action. Our top left one is Dennis Keefe, one of our physical therapists, and he was in the patient experience work group at the time, and they were embracing the theme of the Disney way, and he has the Mickey Mouse ears on to inspire him. On the top right is another work group. They're identifying hiccups in a current workflow process. And then in the bottom is also, we are providing free post-race stretching following a 5K race. This was a project that a work group organized to give back to the community, and it was also a great opportunity for us to promote our services. Okay, so now we're going to fast forward to January 2015, which we will refer to as the Principle-Based Architecture Eve, Chapter 3. One of our department goals was to reduce staff burnout. Miranda Hayek, now one of our supervisors, was a work group leader at the time. She will share a bit about our journey in addressing staff burnout, which led to the evolution of our daily huddle.
All right, thanks, Sarah. So staff burnout was identified as one of those areas of needed improvement from our staff satisfaction surveys in the fiscal year 2015. But before I share what we did, I'd want you to get a little bit to know our department. So imagine we have 42 employees that cover a total of 19 different locations. So most of our therapists typically cover about 1 to 2 locations, but some can cover up to 4 different locations in one given day. So at that time, our department really had no formal communication system in place, which meant that we had no process for either asking for help or providing help to others, which did lead to a lot of frustration. Some of us felt very alone being out on our own, unsupported, and ultimately burnt out. So we started putting together a work group that consisted of representatives of all disciplines and locations. That way we could get a complete picture of the possible frustrations and reasons for burnout. This work group utilized an A3 as a tool to help us identify the root cause of staff burnout and help us develop what we wanted our future state to look like. So after 3 months of meeting regularly, we were ready to begin our huddle. This started in March of 2015. Our huddle was focused around our schedule for the day and the following day. When implementing the huddle, we embraced scientific thinking. Our huddle was a continuous experiment where we learned, we improved, and achieved our desired outcomes systematically. So not every experiment we tried worked, but it did give us the knowledge for our group to help us become more successful. So one example is, with getting that many people from our department together on a daily basis for our communication, we had first tried the FaceTime type of thing, and then that really didn't work, so we tried using a regular phone and putting it on speakerphone setting. That wasn't quite working as well, and so then we finally trialed a conference phone line, and that actually worked, and we continue to do that today and use that with pretty great success. I'd like to share with you why our daily huddle has been so successful. First off, our frontline staff has actively been involved in that whole development of the huddle, as well as our frontline staff developed the expectations for the group. We were also very involved with being the leaders of that group. The role of our manager in leadership was more to be supportive and coaching. We were very much able to continue our daily huddles without having the manager or leader present. We were very engaged in the huddle process because it had purpose and meaning to all of us. So we were, and we were addressing one of our main pain points, which was the lack of communication and efficiency with our schedule. So because of our communication huddle that we had put together, we were now able to allocate our staff resources more efficiently to the service areas in need. And I'd just like to share that our recent staff satisfaction survey results indicated that our staff burnout has now improved by 22 points since the initiation of our daily huddle, which means about 91% of our rehab staff no longer felt burnt out during their day.
Thanks, Miranda. Okay, so now it's October 2015. Our huddle's going strong. We haven't missed a day. And now we're starting to think, how can we address day-to-day problems? As I stopped by my administrator's office to give him an update one day before leaving, he shared there was an opening in a 2-day course called the Foundations for Transformation and asked if I was interested in attending. This brings us to Chapter 4, Principle-Based Architecture is Coming to Town. So I did go to the training, and when I came back, I followed the advice from the course instructors, and I began trying to explain principle-based architecture to others. I started with my husband, actually, and he's a black and white kind of guy, so he didn't immediately latch on with open arms to the concept, but it was actually probably good practice in explaining it. And so then next, I went to individual team members and started explaining it to them, and eventually to our entire rehab department at a department meeting. I remember trying to explain the diamond, and you can see that in the photo on the left. I drew out the diamond in my office, and when I was explaining it, I tried to always tie it back to real life examples in our department. I also was careful not to introduce too many new terms because I didn't want to confuse or overwhelm staff. And if you see the sticky notes that are posted along that picture, those were notes that I made to myself to remind me of things that I wanted to say because I was still learning it myself. Then if you look on the right, I also shared with the staff the 3 gifts principle-based architecture was supposed to help with. The first one was a proactive approach to changing our culture, promotes sustainability, and promotes department flexibility. So staff and myself were intrigued by that as well as confused a little bit. I don't think any of us fully grasped or understood what that meant or what that would mean for us. So at that same time, I also played catchball with my administrator, Dave Rooney, on principle-based architecture and how it fit with rehab. Catchball was a term that I learned at the course. So as we were playing catchball, Dave and I could see examples of where we already were using the concepts of principle-based architecture because we were aligning our goals at our annual strategic planning meetings. We had staff that were engaged in making improvements in their work groups, but we could also see where we were struggling with sustaining results. We were extremely familiar with the quick wins from a tool-based problem solving. Sustaining a new change was hard, and we had room for improvement in what we wanted our culture to be. So in reflection or summary, principle-based architecture reinforced some of the things that we were already doing, but it could really give us a structure to, we felt like, to catapult further and faster. And that really sounded exciting to both of us. So as Mike mentioned, we weren't the model cell for our organization, so our story could have stopped there, but luckily it didn't. My administrator removed barriers so that we could move forward with small tests of change that were right in alignment with the other improvement efforts that were already going on in other parts of our organization. But from there, we became, as Mike refers to, the rogue huddlers. Janessa Luzum, one of our work group leaders, is going to take the story from here as we unknowingly became the rogue huddlers.
Chapter 5, Problem-Solving System. It starts with the behaviors. So about a month before Sarah attended a course on principle-based architecture, it was also identified in our staff survey that we could improve in the areas of openly confronting and solving problems, as well as staff feel free to speak their mind without consequence. As our rehab department had grown, we did not have a process in place to communicate or solve problems other than our scheduling problems. So in September 2015, we started a work group specifically to address these areas. It was in that work group that we decided we needed a process to identify and solve our problems. And like most kids at Christmas, we like shiny new toys or tools, so we jumped in and started using several tools to start this process. We first created our own tool we coined as the hiccup board. This was a quick poster board we distributed to all of our locations along with sticky notes. Staff were instructed to quickly jot down any problems that came up in their day and stick it on the board. This gave us a quick and easy way to first see if staff were able to identify problems and also what types of problems staff were encountering in their day. From there, we initiated an A3. Using the A3 as a tool initially guided us through the process and helped us to identify our root causes. Our root causes at that time were our culture was just to work around problems and not necessarily solve them. Our staff didn't have a method to communicate problems, and our department didn't have a system in place to carry out any changes. The A3 was a nice tool to start with, but eventually we got stuck when it came to what we wanted our target state of the problem-solving system to look like. During that time is when Sarah attended the conference where she learned about principle-based architecture. As she stated earlier, when she returned from the conference, she began to educate us and incorporate it into our work. Once we started to incorporate principle-based architecture, we were able to move forward. Our initial target state was definitely a work in progress, as you can see from this slide. It consisted of a dry erase sheet on Sarah's office wall. We like these dry erase sheets because it allows us to think quickly and make changes and adjustments as our system was evolving. It eventually developed into this, our current problem-solving system. Through the process, we utilized principle-based architecture to develop a problem-solving system that was thorough and in-depth, with rationale and meaning behind it. We spent considerable amount of time identifying our purpose and what key principles best represented the problem-solving system for us. So the top part of our problem-solving system that I just showed you is the key principles. These key principles are what we felt was important to guide our behaviors. The first one is assure quality at the source. We wanted to be able to search for root causes of problems ourselves and to prevent them from reoccurring. The next one is respect every individual. We wanted staff to feel safe in bringing up problems and also feel comfortable and have the tools to improve the work where it's being done in their areas. And then finally, think systemically. As a department, we wanted to align our goals and process with the organization, and our manager is able to connect us with the resources outside of our work area. Remember these, we will come back to these. Another part of our problem-solving system that we created is our ideal behaviors. I have these listed on the screen now, and I'd like to take a look at some of the behaviors that we thought represented from each leader, manager, and frontline staff that would allow our system to function. So from the leaders, we thought it was important that they would help connect us to the WMC vision. They would also coach the principles of principle-based architecture. They could assist with removing barriers as well as we thought it was important that leaders engage with development of a problem-solving system. In the next column, under the managers, we felt that it was important that managers would recognize and reward people for bringing forth problems. They would also coach problem solving and its principles to staff members, and also connect staff and resources and remove barriers as needed. So what would it look like with ideal behaviors for frontline staff? First, staff would have to identify problems and bring them forth to our meetings, and follow through with our problem-solving card, which you'll see in a little bit. We also thought it would be important for staff to coach each other and help each other in solving our problems. The behaviors are key. They drive our system. If we see these behaviors, our system is working. Let's take a quick look at a problem-solving system, and I want you to look at the swim lanes, like Mike talked about before. The leader's roles are in the red box, as you can see towards the top of the problem-solving system. The manager's roles are in the green box, and frontline staff are in the blue boxes. In this section, we clearly spell out what each step looks like for leaders, managers, and frontline staff in our problem-solving system. And I want you to note the key to this problem-solving system is that it was developed by our frontline staff with guidance, coaching, and support from managers and leaders. The weight of the system is carried out by the frontline staff, as you can see from the blue swim lanes, with continuous support from our leaders and managers. So what does this look like in action? This is our orange problem-solving card. This is one of the main tools that we use in our problem-solving system. This problem-solving card that we use it to surface, communicate, and guide us through the problem-solving system. This was a PDSA card, and we modified it to suit our needs and make it easy for our staff to use. We actually went through a couple modifications, and we think that's important. We want staff to be able to feel comfortable using the tools that we have brought in and be able to use them quickly. The card is orange for a reason. It's a quarter sheet of orange cardstock. We designed it so it could stand out to allow staff to quickly locate them when they identify a problem. They are distributed throughout our department and make them accessible when a problem arrives. So when a staff member identifies a problem, they fill out their name, date, and condition of the problem. The staff then brings the card to our problem-solving huddle, which we have 2 times a week, to report the problem. Now, if you look at the bottom card, there is a section designated for a leader of the card and for team members. At our huddles, staff members, after the problem is brought forth, staff members volunteer to be a part of the team to solve the problem. And we encourage about 2 to 3 staff members to be a part of each problem. This is very important, we felt, because we all feel better solving a problem when we have someone to work with. Staff are more likely to carry out the process when they have support and help from others, and they're not solving a problem on their own. So the card has sections that continues to move us through the process of solving the problem. These cards are kept on a board in the heart of our staff office. The cards are reviewed at the problem-solving huddle every Tuesday. Staff members report where they're at in the process and if they have any barriers to solve the problem and what the next step of the problem-solving process is for them. This holds staff accountable for the card and keeps the process moving along. I'm going to go through one of the daily problems that was identified from our problem-solving system. One of the problems that we had was when patients check in our department. In our department, we have many patients that come and go in a day. Many of our patients enter our doors and just take a seat in the waiting room without notifying the front desk of their arrival. We did not have a formal check-in system other than on patients' first day of therapy. Our front desk staff did not have a standard way of notifying therapists when their patients arrive. The therapists can be in many areas in our department and can be difficult to locate. It did not really work for the front desk staff to leave the desk and search the department to notify each therapist when their patient arrived. The therapists, however, were getting frustrated with the front desk staff because they thought that the front desk staff were not doing their job, and the therapists spent considerable amount of inefficient time checking for their patients. The front desk staff, however, did not realize the current system was a problem. This problem had been occurring for months. One of the therapists used the problem-solving system and noted this problem and wrote it down on an orange problem-solving card and brought it to our problem-solving huddle. Once the problem was stated, other staff members volunteered to be on the team to solve this daily problem. On this team, they were able to look at the root causes of the problems from all perspectives. The problem was solved actually the next day by our frontline staff. It was communicated at our next huddle, and standard work was created by frontline staff. This is no longer a problem for our department, and the new process has been sustained. So how does this tie back to the three key principles we identified for our problem solving? Align. Think systemically. We looked at the problem and solutions from a broad perspective, taking into consideration both therapist and front desk expectations to create a system that met all of our needs. Enable. Respect every individual. Our staff felt comfortable enough to surface this problem at our huddle without hard feelings or blaming of those involved. Our managers enable us to improve our work where it is being done. Improve. Assure quality at the source. Frontline staff were able to improve our system to provide better patient flow, decrease wait time for patients, and frustrations among staff. Along with assistance from our managers, we were able to identify root causes of the problem. So the problem-solving system has really changed our culture in our rehab department to that of daily problem solvers. It has given us a way to identify and solve problems. It has changed our department from looking at the person and expecting someone else to take care of the problem to looking at the process and cooperatively working together to make it work for us. We have the systems, tools, and support from our leaders and managers. Our managers and leaders are now able to support and coach us through the process of solving these daily problems instead of putting out fires these daily problems cause. Chapter 6, the KATA Questions. How has our problem-solving system evolved? So currently, our problem-solving system has been meeting since April of 2016. We meet 2 times a week for about 10 minutes, with approximately 2/3 of our staff utilizing the problem-solving system with plans to roll it out to the remainder of staff in January. In 9 months since its creation, our department has surfaced more than 40 problems, with 26 of them being solved by frontline staff and the others currently in the process of solving. In creating this system, one of our goals was that it would be an easy-to-use system that staff felt helped their day and did not view as another thing they had to do. In a recent poll, as you can see on the left of the screen, we took a quick poll in one of our huddles, asking staff, has the problem-solving system positively affected their workday? And as you can see from the results of the poll, it has. Obstacles. One of the first obstacles that I would say we encountered with creating this system is that it was very overwhelming. We did not know what it would look like, and we had times where we felt very overwhelmed by it. We didn't know what direction it would go. Another obstacle that we have encountered is rolling it out to other areas. As we began rolling out to other areas, we realized that each area is unique in their makeup and needs, and what works for one area may not work for another area. Our next step. We are currently working on our next step is as developing a standard work system. It's nearly impossible to sustain the result of a problem if you do not have a standard work system in place. We're in the beginning stages of this and is constantly changing. Finally, lessons learned. We learned we need to focus on one small step at a time.
All right. Thanks, Janessa. Okay, the next chapter we thought that would be appropriate and fun is the most popular Santa questions. So the first one is, so this sounds great, but are you getting results? Well, if we look back at our organizational pillars, we can see how principle-based architecture has helped lead us to results. So our answer is yes. Just this past week, we received our staff satisfaction survey results from a survey taken this past fall, and those results are in comparison to the fall of 2015. So to share with you a few of our results, 86% of staff responded positively to openly confront and solve problems, which that's a 26-point increase. And if you remember, the purpose of our problem-solving system was to create daily problem solvers. 80% of the staff responded positively to feel free to speak my mind without fear of negative consequences, a 23-point increase, and ties back nicely to our key principle of respect every individual. 89% of staff responded positively to we admit and we learn from mistakes, a 21-point increase, ties back to another one of our key principles of assure quality at the source. And finally, wanted to share our last one of 89% of staff responded positively to the spirit of cooperation and teamwork in my work unit, a 23-point increase, and refers to thinking systematically. So if you look at these scores and the amount of improvements and how they really tie back to what we've been working on, it's quite a reassurance and an affirmation to our team members of all the positive work that we've been doing this past year. So staff are feeling more fulfilled. Let's take a look at the rest of the organizational pillars. Health outcomes. So as part of our problem-solving system, a staff member had brought forth the need for improvement in our functional outcome measure scores, specifically on accuracy. And that's a significant problem because without accurate scores, we're unable to know areas of strength or areas of improvement, and it could eventually affect reimbursement. Now, this problem was quickly identified by our group that it's a bigger problem and that our orange problem-solving cards wasn't the right tool for it. And so we've developed a multidisciplinary team that is working to address this problem. And this problem could have likely not been identified or identified months later if we hadn't had our system in place. Patient experience. We have seen an overall decrease in repetitive patient concerns and complaints. Again, a part of our problem-solving system, a staff brought forth a patient's concern, brings forth patient concerns and complaints that they've heard. An example of one is that a staff member stated that a patient had questions or concerns about their payment and billing. And in the past, it would have probably not been addressed very well, or they would have come to me and I would have said, gosh, I think we've had that problem before, and I think we talked to somebody in billing, but I can't remember who I talked to in billing, and I can't remember what they said. And so then I go and I make 3 or 4 phone calls to different people to try to find out the answer to the question. I finally get the answer to the question. Then I need to go find the therapist. Well, she's busy with patients. I'm busy with patients and meetings, and so it takes 4 or 5 attempts for me to connect with the therapist to tell them the answer. So then I finally do tell them the answer, and it's how many days later, and then they can try to go back and tell the patient. And then that's where it would end often. Often we never shared it with the rest of the group, even though the problems happened before, it's happening now, and it's likely going to happen again. The other part is we hardly ever looked at proactive ways to eliminate that from even being a concern or a complaint for a patient. So quite dysfunctional, I know, but I share it because perhaps parts of it strike a chord with some of you. So looking with that same scenario, this is how we actually handled it. We identified the scope and the root cause of the problem. We consulted the revenue cycle team about our patient concern. We identified strategies to not only address this certain patient's concern, but strategies to eliminate it from even being a concern for our patients by making it part of our standard work to proactively address this. We then communicated it to the rest of the group. And then, so ultimately, this solution has contributed to our decreased repetitive patient complaints. All right, next pillar, operational excellence. We have seen a 5% improvement in our productivity based on our salary expense as a percent of our revenue. And this is a reflection of our improvements in efficiency and just means it's costing us less to serve our patients. Our final pillars, growth and funding our future. From fiscal year 14 to 16, we've seen a 35% increase in our total revenue, which contributes positively to our True North strategy of improving NOI. So that is what, as far as our results. If you're like us, you're probably sitting there on the phone and you have jam-packed days that are ever changing and you're thinking, how can you possibly add one more thing? Which this leads to our second most popular Santa question, how do you find the time? Well, my answer is it's really not about finding or adding time. It's about changing your problem-solving paradigm. It has become how we do our work and how we manage improvement. It's not something separate or added. We address problems in real time rather than working around them, which takes time. We communicate the results so it doesn't happen again, which it takes more time when you fix the same problem multiple times. And we proactively look at things to eliminate the problem from even happening in the first place. Again, saving time. To get this shift in paradigm, though, it is like working a new muscle. So leaders need to model and coach to this type of thinking. I do this on a daily basis. I help staff identify problems, and I help them see how by them identifying that problem, how it has helped not only them, but it's helped our patients, it's helped our coworkers, and our organization. And it's empowering for them to see the impact that they can have by simply bringing forth and being an active participant in solving the problem. The other shift in thinking is that you don't need to reserve a conference room, gather around a table for 30 to 60 minutes to solve problems. In rehab, we solve problems where we're doing the work. It may be 2 or 3 minutes at a time because that's all it takes, and to observe and maybe ask some questions. Secondly, this is important to remember, keep it simple. Do small tests of change. But in saying that, don't randomly throw darts at something. Base it off scientific thinking so you aren't wasting your time on solutions that aren't really getting at the root causes. And finally, make the tool work for you. Don't get hung up that, oh, I've got to use an A3 or I got to use these new orange problem-solving cards I heard about or make a fancy graph. Do what you need to do for the problem. What's going to help you? In the Foundations for Transformation course, they talked about how you do less firefighting and more coaching and supporting with principle-based architecture. It really is true. I am now able to spend my time coaching and supporting rather than constantly putting out repetitive fires. It's rewarding for the staff, and it's very fun for me to watch, which is a perfect lead-in to our next chapter. Believe in the magic of fun. So our story just would not be complete if we didn't include this chapter. You may have guessed we like to have fun with things with this storybook Christmas theme. So when we first started the concept of being daily problem solvers, I happened to be listening to a Christmas movie, and one of the characters said in it, a problem is just a snowball waiting for a target. And that really struck with me, and I thought how true that was. I mean, if you think about it, who hasn't been in a snowball fight? And first you make that huge snowball and you think, I'm going to hit them big. Then you go to throw it, and if you have an arm like mine, you realize you're not quite strong enough to throw it as far as you thought, and it like plops 1 foot in front of you. So then you readjust the size of the snowball so that it's more manageable. Maybe this time you take a few running steps to get more oomph on it. Then you nail your target. So how does this relate to problem solving? 1, even when you miss your target, it can still be fun and trying. 2, snowball fighting and solving problems, you are using scientific thinking. And third, I think this is the most important part, that same proud and empowering feeling you feel when you hit your target is the same feeling you can get from solving daily problems. So these are a few pics from our department meeting. We had an indoor snowball fight. As you can see, we had a lot of fun with it. And then afterwards, we talked about how problems and snowballs are a lot alike. And so it was a fun way for us to remind each other that when you are starting to feel frustrated with problems, think about it as a snowball. So I have one other quick example of how we incorporate fun. For the past 3 years, we have picked a theme to get us through the year, and this year we chose the ninja theme. And I'd like to give a quick shout out and thank you to Alyssa, one of our rehab techs, because she came up with the theme this year. And so we chose the ninja theme because ninja represents resilience. There's obstacles, changes that we need to get through, and you find ways to get through them just like a ninja does. If you know the television show American Ninja Warriors, they aren't superheroes. They're human beings just like us. They're making mistakes. They're being innovative as far as their training strategies because they're like using hay bales, and they're inspiring others to get involved. When you watch them, you start to think, maybe I could do that. So again, they're making mistakes, being innovative, being inspiring, being resilient. And that's exactly what our rehab team is and what we aspire to be, and feel like that's what we need to be in these changing days of healthcare and reimbursement. So to help us embrace that feeling of the power of the ninja, 2 of our staff members, Allison, our front desk secretary, and Beth, led us in a few ninja moves. So we had fun while doing that, and now each staff member has their own ninja band that they can tie to their chair or place it wherever it suits them, that it can be a reminder when they come across their next challenge to simply get their ninja on. So, all right, to just wrap up our webinar for today, how to spread principle-based architecture cheer for all to hear. So underline, you need to support at every level. Leaders support managers, managers support frontline, and frontline support each other. I see this every day in our department. Define your purpose, which means figure out your why. Don't overthink it though. We do have a tendency to do that sometimes. Why do you work here? Why do you want this system? Why should we solve this problem? Knowing why helps guide our work and is simply often more inspiring. Enable, involve the front line. I think a common myth may be that involving front line means leaders are just dumping the work on them. It's not about that. Frontline know their work best and they have great ideas. As a leader, your role is really to be there to support and coach them through the process. Many of us are often quick to jump to solutions. We need to coach people to see, are we thinking of who else this may affect, or are we sure we are identifying all the whys? Janessa's example on the orange card for notifying therapists, there was many whys. If we hadn't identified all of them, we wouldn't have successfully solved the problem. And you need to celebrate struggles and successes. We are currently struggling with our standard work system. It's not quite working the way we want it yet, but it's definitely better than it was a month ago, and I'm 100% confident it's going to be even better in a month. So celebrate that and just keep trying. Struggles is going to make things even stronger. And finally, improve. Start small. When we first thought about developing a problem-solving system, it was overwhelming. We started with a pilot group and gradually expand. And problem solve together. Other departments, other disciplines can have a great perspective that is needed to successfully solve a problem. Use their expertise. And lastly, have fun with it. Building the right systems for you and changing culture doesn't happen overnight. You need to be patient, so you might as well have some fun along the way. Well, this completes our story. We hope that you found it helpful and somewhat enjoyable. This webinar was presented by only 3 of us, but our story would have not been possible with We want the commitment and engagement of every staff member in our department and our leadership team. We'd like to also recognize Chelsea Kramer, Allison Blank, and Sarah Anderson from Rehab, as they had key roles in initially establishing our problem-solving system. So that completes our webinar. We'd like to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks to the rest of the team. I've unmuted the phones if anyone has any questions. I didn't see any questions on the chat function. Dirk offers some congratulations and it thinks it's awesome, and thanks for sharing, so I would agree with that. We got some feedback coming back on, that's why we unmute the phones. Are there any questions from anyone on the phone line or the webinar today? Sarah, I think you packaged some really good advice for people. If you had a conversation with someone that was curious or skeptical about this and said, well, what do I do, say, in the next 30 days if I wanted to jump into this? Any thoughts on what some immediate next steps might be?
Staff members.
Okay, I'm gonna. Okay, we're gonna try that again. Unmuting the phones isn't gonna work. Go ahead, Sarah.
I think the key point is just start talking to your staff members about it, and start engaging them. I think that's a key first step.
I agree. I think when Sarah came back from her conference and started educating us on the key principles about principle-based architecture, just getting used to that terminology and that mindset has changed my mindset of how I look at things every day.
Okay, great. Here's a question from Steve. He asks, has the team identified any daily metrics that are driving improvement opportunities at the huddle?
That speaks, we're getting more to that. I think in the beginning we really were focusing on our behaviors and getting those behaviors, and so that's kind of one of our next steps, is really looking at different metrics. As I shared, some of it we've seen some improved productivity and revenue, and it's helping some of our health outcomes type of things as well.
Okay, great. Lisa has a question here, and first of all, a compliment, a wonderful presentation. You guys know Lisa. She's the leader of your organization. And here's her question. Can you speak to the importance of senior leadership support and what has helped or what more you may need from leadership? Great question.
I think that is extremely important to have senior leadership support and being able to bounce ideas off them that we're thinking about doing, and having them being visible in our department has been nice as well, and that staff know what we're doing, that they find important as well and has value.
Right. And I think as a staff member, having seen how senior leadership has supported us and has removed any barriers that we have is key for keeping us moving forward with this and sustaining it.
Great. Yes, it's super to watch what you folks have done. Some people may say, well, it sounds like this is something that's only unique to what Rehab could do, or what Sarah can do, or what others can do. But I think that you've given some great encouragement for what everyone can do and how you can really try to make this your own and make it work for you. So again, congratulations on the great work. Thanks again for doing this today. If there are any follow-up questions, I'm sure that Sarah and her team would be willing to share some thoughts with others offline as we follow up. What will happen next is the recording from this session on our website is going to move over to the webinar recording section, so anyone can get a copy of it. I'll be sending out the link to everyone, and they'll be able to watch the recording and share it with others. Encourage people to do that. Coming up next in January 12th, just around the corner, In a related organization, Sarah mentioned the folks in La Crosse. They latched onto a lot of this work and been doing some great work. And so Glenn and Paul and Sid are going to share some of their current work and current thinking, and it's specifically around that template idea that Sarah and her team have shared and experimented with. Later in January, Dirk from Naples, Florida, is going to do part 2 of some of the work that he's done to think about experimenting with thinking systemically and what the challenge is with that and how you can help people think and practice and act with systems thinking in mind. In February, Ajay Raikar is going to give a presentation that's going to build on some of the conversations we've been having around strategy deployment as we build one of our next white papers on the Pracademics Guide to Strategy Deployment. He's going to be talking about strategy execution and strategy deployment. In March, we're going back to Winneshiek Medical Center. Lisa, Dave, and Sue, leadership team members from the organization, are going to give a higher level view of some of the work that's been done. So today's presentation is a nice introduction to the work that they're going to be doing. So we're looking forward to that. Later in March, March 31st, Debbie McAllister, who was with Sutter Health in California, now is coaching and advising, is going to talk about the power of vulnerability in coaching. So we're looking forward to that presentation. Anybody could and is encouraged to share stories on what they're doing, how they're trying to apply the model for Institute for Enterprise Excellence that we offer. And there's a number of aspects of that that we're interested in pursuing. So if anyone has something they'd like to share or ideas that they would like to share, you can contact me with that email address there. We also have a group on LinkedIn. If you want to use that as a forum for sharing ideas or questions, you can join again by contacting me and getting involved that way. We have one learning opportunity scheduled. It goes back to that systems redesign methodology. And if you look at February 8th and 9th in California, we're going to be doing that. The folks from Memorial Care Healthcare are going to be providing that course. So I want to thank again the folks from Winneshiek Medical Center, Sarah and her team, and looking forward to learning more about what they're doing. I hope everyone has a good holiday, and if you're traveling, travel safe. In our neck of the woods, as Sarah mentioned, it could be kind of tricky, so we're going to try to be careful as we travel around. So thanks again for participating today, and hope everyone has a good holiday. Thanks again.